Psst, check out my Patreon. Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another review of the Powerpuff Girls 2016 Season 3. The episode that's on the agenda for today is the very last Blossom-centric episode of the entire series. Well, if you go by the title card color, that is. That's right, despite Season 3 containing yet another 40 episodes, just like Seasons 1 and 2, there is a whopping 1 episode dedicated specifically to Blossom, and it's episode freaking 3. Wow, so I guess 3 episodes in and we're already experiencing the last appearance of something. Huh. Well, if that doesn't tell you how disregarded Blossom is, I don't know what will. In this episode, titled Blossom Cubed, which is a really annoying title by the way, if only because Blossom times Blossom times Blossom is not the same thing as 3 times the Blossoms. In fact, there are only 2 numbers in existence that you can both cube and triple to produce the exact same result, and those numbers are 0 and the square root of 3. Any other number, no matter what its value may be, cannot be cubed and have it be equal to 3 times itself. Now, Blossom's definitely not equal to 0 because one of her exists, and I don't know how you could possibly attribute one Blossom as being equal to the square root of 3 because she's one whole being. And sure, some may say I'm looking a little too deep into this title, but like, the episode is called Blossom Cubed, but there's 3 of Blossom present, so really she was tripled. It should be Blossom tripled, or Blossom times 3. If she was raised to the 3rd power, there'd still be only 1 of her because 1 to the power of any number is equal to 1. As I've said before, I've got a degree in physics, I know my shit, and this isn't how math works. But incorrect math aside, Blossom does end up getting duplicated into 3 entities, which leads to some interesting results. Let's head right into this, shall we?
Whoa! That bank looks so nice! I think I'll rob it twice!
So the episode begins with a new criminal on the block known as Duplicate, who has duplication powers and is using them to rob a bank in the center of Townsville. Whoa, 2 reboot episodes in a row that start off with criminal activity? What is the world coming to? Yes, Duplicate here is a new one-time villain in the show with the ability to create multiple copies of anything that her hand lasers come into contact with. The only drawback is that the copies only come in black and white, which on one hand is a good way of visually distinguishing the duplicates from the original. However, at the same time, if Kate really wanted to disguise copies of something as the original, it wouldn't really work all that well. Now this power begs the question, why does she even need to copy banks when she can just copy money? Doesn't that ruin the entire point? Well, not exactly, because the character is actually built around the fact that she enjoys the crime more than the reward for committing the crime, if that makes sense. She duplicates these banks in order to keep robbing them because that's what she values, the experience, rather than to just get super rich. Though why the money bags she pulls out of the second bank aren't grayed out, I'll never know. Now it's about time for the Powerpuff Girls to show up and put a stop to her evil plan, and they attempt to do so by executing Plan Cruise Control Crush. Although Bubbles and Buttercup decide to grab blue coupes despite the original plan clearly calling for red sedans. I don't know why that matters, but it's Blossom we're talking about here, so there has to be some sort of menial discrepancy present that would cause all of this to fail, otherwise they'd defeat the villain no problem. Instead, we get treated to this. Never mind the fact that Bubbles lifted this entire building in Tiara trouble, right? There's no reason why these cars should have weighed them down, but blatant inconsistencies, gotta love them. This gives Duplicate the prime opportunity to get away, but not before Blossom uses her ice breath to freeze the ground and cause her to trip, resulting in a chain reaction where she zaps Blossom with her duplication lasers and ditches the scene behind a street corner.
Oops! Time to split! Take 2!
No idea why she said take 2 there. I really don't get what the point of that was. As I'm sure you can guess by the title, this is what leads to Blossom meeting 2 identical duplicates of herself, and the group of now 5 Powerpuff Girls all proceed to head home together where who else but the Professor finds another way to be a despicable human being.
3 times the Blossoms can only equal one thing. Trouble.
Well, as long as the amount of daughters I have is a prime number, everything's hunky-dory by me.
Why even have him here at all if he's just going to be an asshole? I don't care if these are meant to be jokes, the professor is a shitty dad and a terrible role model. And his influence must be rubbing off on Blossom too, because, like the professor, she sees no issues with having more of her around, whereas Buttercup is clearly concerned that this isn't going to be a good thing for them. Bubbles, on the other hand, needs a little more convincing.
Free puppy adoptions for the whole neighborhood.
No, thank you.
Turns out the original plan for this scene was for Blossom to be allergic to the puppies, but that was scrapped because it was apparently too justified of a reason for her to slam the door, and quite frankly, I think that says it all. The fact that something was too justified that it had to be cut, I mean, really. I don't know what else to say. I mean, that speaks for itself. Fortunately, they don't get much time to dwell on it before getting a new call from the mayor telling them that Infernus has returned and is currently attacking the town. It's good to see this guy again, considering the last time we saw him was for a brief 20 seconds of filler in the episode Tooth or Consequences from season 2. Sure beats having to watch the same lobster guy get reused like a dozen times because the show couldn't be bothered to come up with any other original monster designs, right? That's one thing you gotta respect the original series for. Very rarely did the classic Powerpuff Girls reuse monster designs outside of their featured episode, if ever. Not here though, it's always lobster guy, lobster guy, lobster guy, lobster guy, lobster guy, lobster. Hey, remember in Muscle Cup where Buttercup got super muscular and disgusting for no real reason and nobody liked it? Well, she's doing it again, and this time she even got Bubbles to join her.
Are you ready?
Bring 'em on!
Let's do this!
It's clevering time!
Like I said, nobody liked this. Buttercup's excitement to get in on the action is quickly diminished, however, after she realizes that the Blossom triplets have already taken it down while she and Pigtails here were too busy being oblivious to their surroundings, forcing Buttercup to make Blossom choose between them. Of course, Blossom, being the smart one and recognizing the more efficient team, chooses her clones because at least they put the safety of others ahead of their own reckless fantasies. Maybe this is supposed to make me feel bad for Buttercup and Bubbles here, but I don't. Her decision sends Buttercup and Bubbles to the costume store where they proceed to make up new identities for themselves so that they can start anew now that they've been cast out by Blossom. Kudos to Bubbles for questioning what the point of the fancy new costume was in the first place. Have they learned nothing from its pointlessness in Blister Sister? Apparently not. Meanwhile, at the Utonium residence, Blossom congratulates her clones on a job well done, although she quickly experiences some rising tension when she realizes they've taken all the strawberry milk and spoiled the ending of a book that she really wanted to read. This scene is obviously leading to the implication that Blossom will get tired of having to deal with herself and want to change to get her other sisters back, or something along those lines. But no, that's not the purpose this scene serves. You'll see what its significance is in the coming moments. Duplicate is robbing the bank once again, and the Blossom trio is there in a jiffy to put an end to her conniving ways. Our villain has learned a thing or two since their last encounter, because seeing how she duplicated Blossom must have made her realize that she could duplicate herself, and in turn create 4 additional copies so that the 5 of them can team up together to blast these girls out of the sky. A frenzy quickly ensues as both Blossom clones try to decide what plan to execute, while regular Blossom tells them there's no time for a plan and that they need to act on impulse.
You know what we really need, Blossom? I couldn't agree more, Blossom. Focus testing! No! We don't have time for that!
Bingo! There it is! That's the cue I've been waiting for. Alright guys, strap yourselves in. Here we go with another one of my traditional, here's why this doesn't work, monologues. Man, I've been looking forward to doing this again. Alright. So these duplicates operate on the logic that they're carbon copies of the original model, right? They act exactly like Blossom, they sound exactly like Blossom, they look exactly like Blossom, and they know exactly what Blossom knows. Aside from color, they are identical replicas, both mentally and physically speaking. Now, it is important to distinguish that this is true as of their origin, aka the moment Blossom got struck by Duplicate's hand laser. These duplicates now have the exact same experience as Blossom does at the time of their inception, which means that the only differences found between the 3 of them would be the knowledge and experience gained after the cloning procedure took place. These clone blossoms are now free thinkers that perceive the world differently from our main character blossom, dependent on the stimulus that they face from their surroundings, which will differ from the original model because they are now separate entities. What this blossom will perceive differs from what this blossom perceives. This of course leads to why our blossom is able to notice that they can't perform one of their plans while the other two carbon copies are caught up in it. In principle, that is. Now you could argue that she's already learned this lesson in prior episodes before, like Splitsville or Monkey Love, but her clones would have to possess that knowledge too. So this assumption creates a chronological contradiction, unless we are to assume this takes place before season 2, which who knows how true that is. I mean, there's plenty of season 3 episodes that take place after 2 and is clearly established, so what makes this one any different? There's nothing that confirms it does. But even with that aside, there are other problems with this. Logically speaking, Blossom would need to experience an event in which planning did not work for her after the duplicates have been created in this episode in order for her to understand that this is a situation where plans will not work. Otherwise, why would she resist her clones' ideas, and or why would the clones not notice that the plans aren't working? None of them would notice it, or all of them would, because they have the exact same knowledge and perception from before the moment they were split. And you know, the entire idea of this is supposed to come from the premise that once they're split, they're going to experience things differently, as I just said. But nothing ever happens in this episode that would warrant leading up to this moment where Blossom shouts,
No! We don't have time for that!
There are no isolated events that teach her to make a distinction that her clones could not. Nothing in this episode ever has Blossom maintain a different perspective than her clones, except for one moment. Remember that scene where Blossom shows minor annoyance from her clones ruining the things that she likes? That was the place where this differentiation was supposed to happen. It was that moment where Blossom breaks away from sharing the same perspective of her duplicates that would have allowed her to see what her clones could not. If there was an event that triggered a chain reaction, that would result in her learning that idea. But her doubles drinking milk and spoiling her book have nothing to do with determining whether or not a plan will be successful in a combat situation. Furthermore, did Blossom really forget all about Spoiler Cheryl? You know, that girl that was explicitly loathed by her for spoiling things?
Play the next one, boss. If we don't find out what happens to Space Tow Truck before school tomorrow, you just know Spoiler Cheryl will spoil the ending for us.
Ooh, spoiler Cheryl.
You'd think she wouldn't be the type to ruin these things for others if she already had a disdain towards that. Otherwise, she'd be a massive hypocrite. And again, Blossom's clones would know this too, because she knew this information before she was duplicated. One could make the argument that these clones are not identical replicas, but nothing in the episode ever indicates that they aren't identical. Everything that we see, aside from the color, is exactly the same. The banks are exactly the same size and shape, the money is the same, the duplicates of Kate that we see are exactly the same. There's nothing that indicates there are differences between them. So if I am to believe that our Blossom is different from the clones, the episode is sorely lacking in some sort of indication that that is the case, because I've watched this episode several times and there is nothing in here regarding that. So yeah, now that my long-winded spiel is out of the way, as I mentioned, this event has a hand in teaching Blossom that she doesn't always need to stick to her plans if they aren't the best strategy of defeating an enemy. Sometimes she should let her sister's methods take precedence or come up with something entirely new on the spot if her previous plans don't work, which again was exactly what she learned in Splitsville and Monkey Love respectively. Have you ever noticed how Blossom episodes are always built around like one of 3 ideas? Either Blossom is jealous of somebody, her plans are her downfall, or she's in denial. Seriously, it's always one of these 3 things. She's that unimaginative of a character that her episode premises always revolve around the same 3 ideas. It's as if her character is so bare bones, basic, dull, empty, lifeless, boring, pointless that the show has to keep repeating the same three things over and over again because there's nothing else that it could do with her. I mean, there could have been episodes where she was shown to be smart and use her intelligence to save the day and things like that, and those episodes also wouldn't fall under any of those three categories I just mentioned, but Viral Spiral and Buttercup vs. Math were stolen by her sisters, so she's shit out of luck. And then this episode title associates her with math anyways, so the original title was supposed to be the Blossom Puff Girls, so I guess this is an improvement, but not by much. But I digress. The clones decide to abandon ship and go focus test their ideas instead because that's something a Blossom would do, causing the mayor to have to resort to his backup plan, the Butterbuff signal. Yeah, remember Bubbles and Buttercup? Butterbuff and Bubs Wonder, as they're known, and in true Batman fashion, they make use of their trusty utility belt to take down their fiendish foe.
We can use them as whips!
Gully, 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 gully! Gully, 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 gully! That's a lot of tanks. Oh.
I don't get it. Why are they shouting this? Why are they running instead of flying? Why are they making these faces? This is stupid. Then again, maybe flying was too justified. My compliments to the costume design though. I will say, I really do like how both of the girls look, especially Bubbles' little pig nose.
None of my plans worked. And there were 3 of me.
That's because your plans were missing 2 key ingredients.
Milk and eggs!
Aside from that, there's nothing else I care about in regards to these two. Yeah, it's cool to see a Batman reference, but it doesn't really enhance the story in any way, and there are plenty of other references to Batman in other media that are way more interesting and creative. And that's all it amounts to, because it immediately distances itself from these alter egos when Blossom just makes up with her sisters and the 3 proceed to take down Duplicate for real. Just like that. Yep, they proceed to erratically fly all around the perimeter while the 5 duplicates fire away in rapid succession, all according to their plan, as the girls manage to lure the 5 of them into blasting each other with their cannons, ultimately defeating them and saving the day.
Take her away! And 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 her away!
Never mind the fact that the mayor named 6 people instead of 5, but the episode ends on the girls agreeing that they're better off working together as usual, while the other 2 Blossoms go on to focus test what they should do with themselves now that they've moved on to greener pastures.
I guess it all worked out.
Yep, and absolutely 0 loose ends.
Totally. Right, Blossoms?
Ooh. Well, I'll go get the shovel.
Admittedly, that's my favorite line of the episode. Nah, in reality, the clones just went back to focus testing because nobody knew what to do with them now that the episode's over. Oh, and they misspelled guidelines. You'd think for being the meticulously organized ones, they'd manage to spell their words correctly. But that about does it for Blossom Cubed. All in all, it's okay, but there are some pretty big leaps in logic present that bring about a rather irrational ending. Aside from the shovel part, that's great. But yeah, for the final Blossom episode, this is pretty disappointing, not gonna lie. The villain was interesting, I suppose, although she certainly could have done more, but I don't find any of the struggles that the sisters deal with particularly compelling. The whole setup for the lesson Blossom's supposed to learn is done so poorly, and the ultimate payoff at the end is resolved so quickly that it makes me wonder what the point of the Bubbles and Buttercup scenes even were, because it never goes anywhere. I think the message it's trying to go for is that the girls should work together and cooperate, but really it comes across as fly around randomly and bullshit your way through life because its convenient coincidences will carry you through and solve all of your problems. Buttercup forces Blossom to choose and then runs off with Bubbles to dress up like Batman for 5 minutes and then come back and they work together again. It's not a very fleshed out B-plot if I do say so myself. But either way, that's all I've got for Blossom to the 3rd power. A sad way to see the streak of Blossom episodes end, and a disappointing result of what I was hoping would be an action-packed episode. That's my time, everybody. Thanks for watching.